Gold, one of the scarcest materials on our planet. In pursuit of it, man has crossed oceans, crossed continents, and burrowed miles underground just to obtain it. Gold is woven into the tapestry of cultures worldwide. For millennia, it has played a fundamental role in economics as a currency, a commodity, and the foundation of sovereign nations. Throughout history, gold has proven to not only be the most trusted way to store wealth, but also the most reliable asset in the face of catastrophes. During the most dire of times, it could be your ticket to freedom, or even save your family's life. Join us as we learn about the role of gold in times of crisis. The Vietnam War raged throughout much of the 1950s and 60s. The communist forces of North Vietnam were locked in a battle to overpower the democratic South, which was backed by the United States. It became one of the longest wars in U.S. history. But finally, in 1975, Saigon fell to the enemy, and the last Americans were airlifted out of Vietnam after 20 years of fighting. Over 3 million Vietnamese and 58,000 American soldiers had died. The war was over. But as communist forces assumed control of the whole country, the hardships of the Vietnamese people were only just beginning.
I was around 7 at the time. It was very hectic. You know, the first year when the war is over, life is different in a way that the government take over everything.
April 30th, 1975 came, and it's just very chaotic in the street, everybody running around. We just stayed in the home and keep ourselves safe as much as we can.
Under the new communist regime, things were far from settled. Vietnam became locked in conflict with its neighboring countries, while at home, government policy created harsh economic conditions, causing the value of the Vietnamese currency, the dong, to plummet.
With the currency, I just remember every few months my mom would say, "Oh my God, they're gonna change money, they're gonna change money." So she would take all the money and gather in the shopping bag and just run to the bank and change it, because if she doesn't change it in time, when they close, they say no more changing, whatever money you have left is worthless.
Many Vietnamese were forced to move out of their homes to uninhabited rural areas that the government called new economic zones. Locals who were considered disloyal were detained in re-education camps, where they suffered hard labor and were forced to make confessions. The new government also saw a need to expel much of the 1.5 million population of Vietnamese Chinese, who they saw as a threat, along with many other political undesirables. They did this by forcibly dismissing them from their jobs and threatening conscription or transfer to a new economic zone, a fate that many considered to be a death sentence.
About 130,000 workers, thousands of whom were highly skilled, globally connected businessmen and businesswomen, were out of a job. They either went into re-education camps or fled the country.
I remember my dad one day say he's gonna be going away for a while, and then they put him in the re-education for 2.5 years. He has to swear allegiance to the Communist Party.
With the country in turmoil and the economy in freefall due to rampaging inflation, it was no surprise that ordinary Vietnamese people, who had a long history of saving in physical gold, now turned to it for survival.
Even in the waning days of the war in 1975, Vietnamese people weren't putting their money in the banks. They were already converting their dong into gold. And this was because, they had no idea what would happen. And after 75, that became even more acute as the Vietnamese government devaluated the currency.
When my sister got the information that the government is going to change the currency system, she transferred all her cash money into gold.
In Vietnam at that time, many preserved their wealth in the form of 24-karat Kim Tan gold bars. Kim Tan bars came wrapped in paper and consisted of 3 leaves of gold, 2 larger pieces and 1 smaller piece, with a total weight of 1 tael, 37.5 grams. Kim Tan gold bars were widely held as a store of value and medium of exchange, not just in Vietnam, but throughout all of Southeast Asia.
And again, you hear these, just horrific tales of people stuffing gold and tying it around themselves and taping it to themselves so they don't lose their most precious commodity and their only means to survival.
The value of gold at that time had been steadily increasing over this period. Gold had risen from $35 per ounce in 1970 to $198 in 1975. And from 1975, it went even higher, reaching $837 in 1980. Everyone wanted gold, and those people hoping to flee the country, whether officially or unofficially, found that gold was the only form of money that would buy them a ticket out.
The gold go to the people who own the boat. And do they want cash? No. They want gold because they can take it with them. Because when they get past Vietnam, what's the currencies for?
In March of 1978, the Vietnamese Ministry of Interior issued an order allowing Vietnamese Chinese to leave the country, organizing a mass exodus. To buy passage on a boat, each refugee had to make an exit payment in gold. This made the evacuation very lucrative for the communist government. So much gold changed hands that payments, which were originally handled in official government buildings, were quickly moved to unofficial facilities to preserve the fiction that the government wasn't involved.
We found out through our investigations that there was an address in Ho Chi Minh City. If I remember correctly, it was a building along Nguyen Du, opposite a cinema called the Palace. On the first floor of that building, they had set up tables. The Vietnamese officials would sit at these tables and people would come in producing gold, mainly in the form of Kim Tan bars. The going rate for official passage on the boat was 12 taels of gold, which was about $3,500 at that time and around $25,000 now. Of the 12 taels for exit payment, the government officials would take 10. The boat organizer was paid 1 and the ship's crew was paid 1. If you didn't have enough gold in this tael form, then you had to top it off with other bits of gold like jewelry.
I guess the really rich people would have gold bar. It's easier to use. For people who are not the rich, they would buy gold as in jewelries.
We found that in 1978 alone, the Vietnamese government made somewhere around $115 million out of this mass exodus. $115 million, and all of it just from the refugee trade. This number was just about equal to the country's total known official foreign exchange holdings at that time.
For those who couldn't secure official passage out of Vietnam, their only option was to leave unofficially. This meant bribing the boat owners directly.
For the Vietnamese who were intent on fleeing and leaving, they didn't know where they would end up. It made much more sense for them to take gold, the commodity they would need to bribe officials, to get out of the country, to hire a boat that may or may not show up, to arrive at distant shores in littoral Southeast Asia and beg officials to be let into the country to only possibly be denied and returned to the open seas. That this gold was basically their lifeline.
Because gold was the only currency anyone wanted to deal in, a covert banking system dealing exclusively in gold had evolved. Most rich people likely had enough gold already, or they could convert their belongings to get enough gold. What we found is that for people who didn't have gold, overseas relatives could transfer cash to another Vietnamese abroad who would then instruct his relatives to transfer gold to that person still in Vietnam.
Yet again, gold was the payment that everybody wanted. Not only was it much sought after, but it also had to be kept hidden from the authorities.
So while he was in the re-education camp, once in a while he would write letters. Like he would tell her to go change a light bulb in the bathroom. She would go to change and suddenly she finds a piece of gold behind the light.
It became more and more expensive for people to get out of Vietnam. But even when they paid the boatmen, they still had no idea if they would actually get away.
Live in Vietnam by boat, nobody really know how hard it take or how long it take and how many people would die, and there's no one who go back and tell them what happened. In the middle of the night, we'll get woken up and we would get onto the beach shore and wait for a small boat to come and get us. Twice, the boat never came. You just don't know who to trust. And if you were tricked, what are you gonna do? Go to the police?
My parents, their friends knew people who knew how to make fake birth certificates. So that morning, I just wear my book bag with another set of clothing in there. We end up leaving with 600 people on a boat that was made for 300 people.
The seas around Vietnam were treacherous. It is estimated that between 200,000 to 400,000 boat people died at sea.
One night, it was a really big storm, and we have one person in the boat. He's actually a professor, and he speaks English. He said, listen guys, the next ship that we see, everybody jump off the boat, because then that way they will really have to capture us.
We barely have enough space to sit and put our hands around our knee and put our head on our knees to sleep at night. I remember they're like, oh, pretend like you are tired and about to die. We're like, why? Because there's our boats out there. Maybe they'll rescue us. Next thing they say, oh no, these are Thai pirates. So we just turned around and took off.
Pirates were a real issue and a constant threat to the Vietnamese boat people. They knew that it was not only the refugees who carried gold as a way of transferring their wealth out of the country, but also the crew carried gold too.
The boat crew would carry the gold payments with them, hiding it on board. When some of the larger refugee freighters came into Hong Kong, Kim Tan gold bars used to pop up in the Hong Kong gold market. At times, the Hong Kong police would seize a refugee ship and they would find gold hidden on board. There's one case where they found over 3,000 taels of gold on one ship. The gold had been wrapped in sacks and hidden in the ship's oil tank.
It doesn't matter. We're gonna die if we are in this boat longer, because there wasn't any food either. So we all jump. We all trying to get into the ship, but I mean the ship is humongous. So they actually captured and brought us all into the ship. We really were afraid that they're gonna bring us back. They said, don't worry, we are all scientists. And when the storm's over, we're gonna give you gasoline, food, and we show you the nearest land. And then we get back to our boat, and then within a day and a half, we get to the Philippines.
So all the people on board, like the older people, they were afraid. So they go, oh, let's just find the nearest land and just land. And it was a little island called Area in Indonesia.
We get to America. We live in Washington, D.C., because that's where my two sisters, who came in 75, stay.
February of 1980, right after Lunar New Year, we flew to America. Since my aunt lived in Merced, we flew into San Francisco International Airport, and then from there, she picked us up. We were very, very lucky that we made it, all 6 of us.
Around 1.6 million Vietnamese people resettled between 1975 and 1997.
I am so grateful to be here and to have so many opportunities.
When I came to the United States, I see how women's rights here are much more than in Vietnam, and that we girls here, we can do whatever we want with what we have in here. I thought a lot about life and what this all means for us to come here, and I was determined to live my life the way I want to live.
It was scary and it's a huge risk, but the reward is so great.
The escape from Vietnam was a huge and dangerous undertaking. Having gold gave people options, whether to pay the official or unofficial toll for passage out of the country, or to transport wealth and, ultimately, fund a new lease on life. There are countless other stories from all over the world where gold has been relied upon to safeguard wealth and savings through times of crisis. Gold has shown itself to be the one form of money that has never failed. Across nations, across generations, across borders and cultures, gold has endured as the ultimate and universal form of wealth preservation. It has done this for thousands of years and will continue to do so for thousands more.